So if you've been interested in fragrance over the last few years, you can't have helped but have noticed just how popular one particular brand has become. And actually, Kayali, love them or hate them, their fragrances, some of them have gone completely viral. How have they achieved this much success in fewer than 5 years? How has that been possible? So in this video, I'm going to break down the possible reasons why Kayali has been quite so successful. And I'm also going to tell you about the brand's founder, Mona Kattan, as well as the inspiration behind a lot of their fragrances. So if that kind of content interests you, then please do consider subscribing if you haven't done already. I'm Claire Smith and I make videos all about perfume, perfume science, and also a little bit about perfume history, including brand deep dives like this one. And if you do end up liking this video, then please do remember to press the like button because that tells me which types of video you like to see. So firstly, let's talk about the importance of the Kattan sisters and their social media presence in the founding of Kayali and of Huda Beauty. So Huda founded Huda Beauty and Mona founded Kayali, but actually Mona was heavily involved in Huda Beauty as well. So both Mona and Huda are well aware of the power of social media and they have used it to their full advantage. So both claim that they have never paid for advertising for their brands, and that's just simply because of their huge social media influence. If you think of larger, more established fragrance brands and think about how much they must spend on advertising, especially around, Christmas and Valentine's, what do you see on TV all the time? You just see Dior adverts, you see Chanel adverts. And when you think about Kayali, you don't see that. And that's because they're all over social media. They don't need to pay for advertising. They've got people talking about their fragrances without advertising. And that's astounding. That's something that really bigger brands are lagging behind in doing. They don't have that social media traction that enables them to save money on advertising. And that makes Kayali a very streamlined, efficient brand when it comes to their spending. To understand the success of the Kayali brand, we also need to look at the success of the Huda brand, and we also need to go back to their childhood. So how did the Kattan sisters grow up? So Mona Kattan is the youngest of 5 siblings, and she has 3 other sisters and 1 brother. So the brother is called Khalid, and her sisters are called Alia, Halida, and also obviously Huda. So Mona was born in Tennessee in 1985 and she stayed there until she was about 13. Her closest sibling is actually Huda, and Huda was born about a year earlier. And actually Huda and Mona as children would play with makeup, and they also would enter beauty contests together, beauty pageants. And actually Mona ended up winning Little Miss Tennessee. And she subsequently said that she thinks that beauty pageants for children are incredibly damaging things. And she actually has seen both effects of winning the pageant in her own life and also losing the pageant in Huda's life. And that's really quite a big thing, isn't it, for children, to have one sister winning a beauty pageant and the other one not winning the beauty pageant. I can imagine that's quite a hard thing to deal with when you're 6 or 7, your sister being declared more beautiful than you are. So the girls grew up in a white Baptist neighbourhood and their parents were Iraqi American immigrants. And actually Huda and Mona felt like they didn't fit in the neighbourhood at all, and they ended up changing their names. So Mona became Monica and Huda became Heidi. These alter egos allowed them to feel like they fitted in a little bit more and gave them a little bit more confidence, basically. And actually this kind of duality of their cultures with the clashing of the American and Arabic cultures is something that they've referenced in their fragrances. It's something that has been a theme throughout their lives. In 2006, the family left America and moved to Dubai when Mona was only 17. Huda, Alia and Mona all ended up studying some form of business or marketing as part of their degrees. And really this set them up for their futures because ultimately they all ended up in beauty marketing and beauty business. So we can't really talk about Kayali without talking about Huda Beauty because Huda Beauty is really where Kayali grew from. So Huda Beauty is a brand that grew out of misfortune because Huda was let go of, made redundant in 2010 as a result of the financial downturn. And actually this horrible situation resulted in a huge opportunity for Huda. So Huda actually enrolled in beauty school in 2010. She trained as a makeup artist And she ended up doing makeup for celebrities and also for royalty. And actually, Huda even started a beauty blog. She began filming tutorials and tips and tricks, and she created this huge following, and that's where the brand grew from. So in 2013, she was looking for some lashes and she just couldn't find any that really suited what she wanted. And she ended up asking for $6,000 from her two sisters, from Alia and also from Mona. And she ended up making these lashes herself and launching Huda Beauty with lashes. Because of her social media presence, people already knew about these lashes before they launched. So actually Sephora launched them in Dubai, and they bought an initial supply of 7,000 pairs, expecting those to sell in around a year. The first day, they sold over 2,000 pairs. And actually, those 7,000 pairs were gone within the week. So you can see just how much the demand was already there because people already knew about those lashes from social media. So Huda is, of course, the face of the brand and the CEO and the founder. But Mona was the co-founder and also the president of Huda Beauty. And Alia was actually the social media manager. Over the space of a year, their brand went from $1.5 million revenue to $10 million revenue. And actually, nowadays, Huda Beauty is worth over $1 billion. As a social media influencer, Huda was incredibly raw and honest. Huda appeared genuine, and this is really what pushed her brand. And Mona, of course, realised the power of this as well, and has used this kind of similar strategy in marketing Kayali. The great thing about Huda has been that she's always pushed brands that weren't her own as well. If she likes a brand, she will talk about it, whether she's paid to or not. And I think Mona is similar. Mona is someone who just likes various fragrances and will also talk about fragrances that are not Kayali. So really, it's this honest and careful and open style of management of social media that has really made both brands very successful. And it's something that's really marked out Mona and Huda from the rest of the social media influencers. Having conquered the world of beauty with Huda Beauty, really the next step was fragrance. And actually, fragrance was really not Huda's bag. Huda wasn't that interested in fragrance, but Mona was a fragrance obsessive. So Mona is someone who notoriously has a huge collection of fragrances now. She has over 4,000 fragrances in her fragrance museum. And she is someone who says that she's been obsessed with fragrance since she was 14. So she says that she bought 2 fragrances with her first wages when she was 14. She bought Liz Claiborne's Curve, and she also bought Lancome's Oui. Mona says she sees fragrance as an invisible cloak of protection, something that can enhance her moods and something that she uses to bookmark her life experiences. She's also been noted as saying that she spends about 10 minutes on her makeup and 90 minutes choosing her fragrance layering combinations for when she's going out. So yeah, she's basically like a normal fragrance obsessive, really, isn't she? So originally Mona was hesitant to be the face of the brand because she'd always been standing behind Huda. But actually she soon realised that she was just the better fit as the face of the brand. So when you think about it, Mona really has the more difficult job because Huda's marketing is very visual. Makeup is just a very visual thing. You can see the before and after results. If you spray on a fragrance, you can't see the before and after results. You have to get that messaging across in a slightly different way. So how does Mona get that messaging across? Well, Mona presents a scenario. She presents the fragrance giving her a feeling or an emotion. She presents a story to her fragrances, a background to them, and that really engages people watching on social media. It makes people interested to try the fragrances because they want to feel what Mona is feeling. And she talks about fragrance as a positive influence on her life and making her life better in some ways. So really, in summary, the success of Kayali is all hinged around social media and their harnessing of that empowering, positive, really kind of fun messaging that Kayali and Huda are both really good at. And the clear passion and enthusiasm that Mona shows for fragrance. It's something that just makes people interested in the brand and want to try their fragrances. So this leads on to the next part of their success, the products themselves. What is it about the products that means that that Kayali have been so successful? What is it about those fragrances? Well, I just think they're really likable, they're really easygoing, and they're just something a little bit different. They just stand out somehow. But how do they stand out? So Kayali in Arabic actually means my imagination, and Mona called it that because she wanted people to layer the fragrance. She wanted people's imagination to be the only limit to how different these fragrances can smell on different people, because she aimed for people to create their own layering combinations from the fragrances that she was putting out. She didn't want people to wear just one. She wanted people to wear 2, 3, perhaps even 4 fragrances, because that is the kind of way that people in the Middle East tend to wear fragrances. So really this was not a new thing for Mona, but it's quite a new thing for the rest of the world. No other fragrance brand has really looked at marketing their fragrances in a layering and combinatory kind of way. That's quite a revolutionary thing, really. And that made Kayali stand out. So Mona launched Kayali in 2018, and actually that was with the help of Huda and her traction on social media, because Mona's presence on social media was not as big at that point. And they initially launched a collection of 4 different fragrances. They launched Citrus 08, Musk 12, Vanilla 28, and Elixir 11. The fragrance bottle design is actually referencing the Middle East as well. So Mona says these bottles look like something you would traditionally see in a Middle Eastern souk. They're very distinctive, and they also have a iteration number on the bottle. So for example, Vanilla 28. And actually this number refers to the number of modifications of the fragrance before Mona was happy with it, before she wanted to release it. Having the numbers on the bottles of the modifications is really a striking and very smart move by Kayali. It's something that really makes people think about the process of making a fragrance and how involved Mona was in that process. And Mona's quite open about it. She says sometimes she doesn't really know when a fragrance is finished, and she just runs out of time and ends up going with the modification she thinks at the time is the best one. So yeah, the numbers on the bottles are a really striking way in which Kayali have kind of done a bit of sort of underground marketing almost, because it really makes people think about the process of fragrance development and gives the fragrance a bit of a story. And that's really something that Mona can talk about on social media. So the original fragrances launched, Elixir 11 was meant to be the hero product. That was meant to be the one that people couldn't live without. And actually Mona described Elixir 11 as her leather jacket fragrance, as the one that made her feel like a badass. But actually Elixir 11 really wasn't the hero product for most people from this range. And the one that really stood out to most, I think, was actually Vanilla 28. Vanilla 28 is the fragrance that went viral from this original collection of the 4. And really Vanilla 28 is something that is quite universal. It's something that people can use for layering with other fragrances. It is just basically a vanilla. It's an interesting vanilla, but it's still a vanilla. And people love vanilla. Vanilla is cakey, vanilla is comforting. And what did we have during 2020? We had a worldwide pandemic. So people were looking for comfort. Even though this fragrance was released in 2018, I think people started talking about it a lot more in 2020. And really this fragrance is something that I think a lot of people who would never have thought about Kayali before heard about and wanted to try, because, you know, vanilla is a very likable fragrance note, isn't it? It's something that it feels quite safe to buy. I think this is a good inlet into this collection. I think this is something that made people feel able to blind buy something, because the likelihood is you're going to like a vanilla fragrance. So yeah, Kayali's Vanilla 28 really was the first one that stood out as a super popular viral product. But there was a bit of a problem. Some people just didn't get the concept of layering fragrances, and Mona tried to deal with this by making the fragrances in different formats. So she produced small bottles to allow people to afford multiple fragrances at once, and she made gift sets with multiple fragrances in them so that people could do layering more easily. She also made rollables so that people could use those for layering. She marketed hair mists, also hand creams as well, to enable people to layer fragrances. So really there was a lot of opportunities for people to learn who perhaps weren't quite so familiar with the layering kind of concept in fragrance. Just over a year later, Kayali launched their fifth fragrance, Deja Vu White Flower 57, and this was launched in January 2020, just a few months before the pandemic. And actually, you would think that people wouldn't really be bothered about buying fragrances around that time, but actually, fragrance experienced a huge boost in sales during the pandemic. And really, Kayali was also being made more available. So it was released in Boots in the UK, which made it just so much more accessible to most people, even if it was only online. Deja Vu White Flower 57 pays homage to Mona's mum. So Mona says that her mum always wore jasmine fragrances when she was growing up. And so the fragrance of jasmine reminds her of her mum. And actually, Mona ended up wearing this one on her wedding day. So Mona got married on the 22nd of February 2022. And she wore Deja Vu White Flower. And her husband-to-be, Elamine, wore Bois d'Argent by Dior. Mona says she sees Deja Vu White Flower as her sexy fragrance. The fragrance that makes her think of sexy slip dresses. And just makes her think about romantic relationships in her life. Following the release of Deja Vu White Flower, the pandemic happened, and actually Mona says that she initially saw the pandemic as a complete disaster for her business, as I think most people would see a pandemic for their business. But Mona actually tried to change this negative situation into a positive one by spending the time during the pandemic developing new fragrance ideas. She couldn't get bottles, so she couldn't manufacture any, but she could at least try to develop new fragrances. The first fragrance that Mona released after the pandemic was Sweet Diamond Pink Pepper 25 back in June 2021. And she said that this one reflected the feelings of love and romance. And she also said that this one reflects the feelings of being a woman. So the softness and the hardness of being a woman, the resilience of being a woman. So the softness is the sweetness, and the diamond is the resilience. The next fragrance to be released was Utopia Vanilla Coco 21 in July, just a month later. And Mona says this one was inspired by her desire to go on holiday during the pandemic. She just really wanted to go away somewhere, and she just couldn't stop thinking about the Seychelles and also her holidays on the Amalfi Coast in Italy. And so she developed this fragrance, which is based around white florals, with a touch of vanilla and coconut. And actually this fragrance is meant to be just her sort of fantasy holiday destination. Mona was really on a roll in 2021 because only a month later she released another fragrance, and that was Invite Only Amber 23. And this one is really quite a departure for Kayali. This one is where they were going back to their Middle Eastern roots a little bit, because this is the first fragrance where they touched on oud. So this fragrance has a little bit of natural oud in it around a synthetic oud kind of core. And actually this makes it quite a gentle oudy fragrance. It's not something where the oud really stands out. It's just a little bit of a nod to Middle Eastern heritage. But there's also a little bit of tobacco in there. And the tobacco in this fragrance is meant to reflect an experience that Mona had in Paris. She says that she went into a smoky kind of cabaret and watched some woman with all eyes on her in this cabaret show. And it inspired Mona to make this fragrance because she felt like, you know, this woman was sexy and strong and was happy to be, you know, looked at, etc. And she just wanted to have that kind of confidence in her life. And even the name of that fragrance reflects those kinds of feelings and the way that the woman has the power. So this fragrance is called Invite Only. So you're inviting people that you want to experience this fragrance with you in your little scent bubble. And really that's a very powerful messaging and something that I think a lot of people would identify with. I think everybody wants to feel confident, and we always want to be assured that we're only inviting the people we want to invite to be near us. And yeah, I think that's a really nice message from that fragrance. I actually think Invite Only is one of their most controversial fragrances, and I think that's really why I love it quite so much. It's something that has quite a lot of gourmand notes in it as well. It also has cherry in it, and it just has this sort of almost boozy feel to it that really attracts me. And I think really this is probably why some people really love this fragrance and some people really hate it. And I really respect Kayali for making that fragrance. I think it's a really striking one, and It's probably one of their more complex fragrances actually. So yeah, invite only. So the next fragrance is really quite different again. So the next one released was actually Eden Juicy Apple 01, and that was in February 2022. So this one, I have to admit, it's not one that I love, this one. And I think really this is this is like the polar opposite of invite only, because this one is the all-American Mona. This is the Mona who was Monica, the Mona growing up in the United States. It's sort of harking back to those kind of American Pie kind of films, to Britney Spears and to the Backstreet Boys, that kind of feel, that kind of American school locker room kind of feel to it. It's a very juicy apple fragrance, and Mona says that she chose apple because she hadn't seen apple used in a hit fragrance for a very long time. So she sort of was harking back to fragrances like DKNYB Delicious and also Ralph Lauren. And actually the brand had used apple in the Elixir fragrance that they originally released, but here the apple was juicy and vibrant, whereas in Elixir it was more floral. Mona says that she has an association of apples with her school days because they're juicy and they're bright and they're fresh and they're young feeling. And she even named the fragrance Eden because of apple's association with the book of Genesis and the story of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, and that sort of feeling of it being the forbidden fruit and of feelings of addiction, which is what she feels towards fragrance. She also named it Eden Juicy Apple 01 because this is the only fragrance where she has used the first modification of the fragrance. That's not to say she didn't make different modifications. She says that she made over 40 different modifications, but she just kept coming back to the first modification. And so that also fits in with the name Eden. The next fragrance to be released was Lovefest Burning Cherry 48. So Lovefest Burning Cherry 48 is again a cherry fragrance. It's much like the sort of cheekier sister of Invite Only, I would say. And actually Lovefest Burning Cherry 48 was a collaboration between Huda and Mona. So Huda at the time was releasing the Lovefest eyeshadow palettes and other things in her makeup range, and Mona released this fragrance. So this fragrance is meant to reflect a festival. It's meant to be a festival that's kind of a cross between Coachella and sort of Burning Man festival. And Mona's original idea for this fragrance was something she wanted to smell of cherries. She says cherries make her happy, and it was an idea of cherries and cream originally, but it actually turned into this kind of burning wood sensation with the cherries, which I actually think is probably a better idea for this fragrance. She made this fragrance basically because she was craving human contact during lockdown. This is another one that she designed during lockdowns, and she just wanted to go to a festival basically. So that's really the inspiration behind this fragrance. And finally, the latest release from Kayali is Vanilla Royale Sugared Patchouli 64. And this fragrance was made to be the bougie big sister of Vanilla 28. So a lot of people had said that Vanilla 28 didn't last on them, that it wasn't that strong. And Mona wanted to address those concerns by making a stronger fragrance, a more intense fragrance. And again, in this one, she used oud. And really, this is a very, very gourmand feeling fragrance again, but also that strong presence of patchouli was something that really is going against the fragrance trend at the moment. So a lot of people did warn her not to use patchouli because patchouli is quite out of vogue at the moment. And patchouli is something that can be quite polarizing. A lot of people don't like very strong patchouli in fragrances, and this is quite a strong patchouli fragrance. So again, she was taking a risk, but actually I would say the majority of the reaction to this fragrance was quite positive. So this fragrance is meant to be the over-the-top queen version of Vanilla 28. The messaging around this fragrance shows Mona dressed like Cleopatra almost, and I think that's really what she's trying to get across with this fragrance, something that's really, really luxurious feeling and rich. And she's tried to achieve that by using a very particular type of vanilla from Madagascar, as well as royal oud, a creme brulee accord, and also rum. And I think, yeah, just it's a very gourmand feeling fragrance, and it really has that Kayali thread running through it, like the rest of their fragrance line. It's just a brand where all the fragrances seem to have a kind of almost gourmand tie through them, really. Even the ones that aren't gourmand feel a little bit gourmand, but this one is definitely a very gourmand fragrance. So where do I think Kayali is going as a brand in future? Well, they are clearly going to release more fragrances, and I would think that they would maintain that kind of 3 fragrances a year release schedule that they have been maintaining. And really, we've seen a few leaks already. We've seen leaks to do with a fragrance called Yum Pistachio Gelato 33, which may or may not be coming out this summer. It's not really been confirmed or denied by Kayali, that one. I can also see Kayali moving into expanding their ranges with their existing fragrances. So for example, I can see them expanding their range with perhaps even candles, or maybe even moving into more body products. And I can also see them doing more collaborations with Huda Beauty. So I definitely don't think we've heard the last of Kayali and Huda Beauty. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you have enjoyed the video, then please press the like button, and please also consider subscribing if you haven't done already. And please let me know what you think of Kayali. Have you tried their fragrances? Were you a doubter like me? Did you avoid trying them for a long time because you thought the hype wasn't real? Which is your favourite fragrance? Please let me know down below, and I will see you in the next one. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.